Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash, DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I am so excited to be participating in a minis challenge hosted by Crafted by Corie. More about that in a little bit. I am bringing you 5 ideas for a Christmas in July or Christmas tiered tray. Now, before we get into that, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload any videos. Also, hit the drop-down menu and hit all so you're notified of all notifications. Then hop on over to Facebook and Instagram and let's get social. Join my crafting community by giving me a like and a follow. I post a lot of behind-the-scenes content that I know you're not going to want to miss. All right, let's get started with these 5 ideas for your Christmas tiered tray. This first DIY is so easy. I had one of these little rocket shooters left over from one of my 4th of July crafts, so I just took off the yellow pieces and that little rubber band on the top. Then I took this peppermint themed scrapbook paper, and all of my scrapbook paper today came from Hobby Lobby recently, so you know that it's in stock. So all I did was measure it out so it would wrap around that little foam rocket. Then I cut out my piece, and by using hot glue, I simply glued it on to start making it look like the North Pole pole. Now, if you can't find these little foam pieces at the Dollar Tree anymore because summer's pretty much over, you can also use a dowel rod, or you can cut up a plunger stick to wrap this paper around as well. There's so many different ideas you can do to still achieve this look. So I wanted to make sure that all of the ends were hot glued down, and then I trimmed off the edges of my pole. That way it would stand up flat and paper wasn't hanging over. Real quick, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. I really hope that you love what you see today and choose to stick around by subscribing to my channel. I am almost to 7,000 subscribers, and I would love for you to help me out by becoming one of them. If you're returning, thank you so much for all of your support and for choosing to come back today. I hope you're a subscriber as well, and don't forget to give this video a like if you're loving what you see. All right, back to the DIY. So after I had both of my ends cut out, I simply took one of these little styrofoam balls and I hot glued it to the top to make the top of my pole. Now, I wanted to actually put some glitter on this, but I didn't have the right color, so I do plan on adding it, but for now, this is how it's going to look. Next, I took this little dowel rod and I used my miter shears to cut it in half just to make it a little shorter. After that, I took my Waverly chalk paint in white and painted my dowel rod. Once my dowel rod was dry, I took a pair of scissors and poked a hole in my paper, and then I pushed the dowel rod inside my pole. Next, I took this little tag that I got from the Dollar Tree and I cut off where the hole was, and now I'm going to cut down my dowel rod just a little bit because it was a little too long, but I had to make sure that it was going to be long enough to hold my little sign. After that, I took these red letters from the Dollar Tree and I spelled out North Pole. To add some detail to my sign, I took my white chalk marker and I drew lines and dots around the perimeter. Then, to protect my stickers, I went ahead and put on a layer of Mod Podge. Once the Mod Podge was dry, I took my Crop-A-Dile and I punched 2 holes at the top of my sign. After that, I took some of this red and white twine. Now, this actually came off ribbon with burlap, so I am just pulling off the burlap part, and then I'm going to loop it through one of my holes, and then I'm going to cut off another piece and do the same. Once both of my pieces of string were looped through, I went ahead and tied them both to my wooden dowel rod. I did make sure that the knots were towards the back of my sign, and then I tacked them down with some hot glue. I also made sure that these were tied really tight. Then I just cut off the extra twine. Finally, I took this little foam ball that I had from Valentine's Day, and if you don't have these, you can just use a wooden bead, and I glued it to the end of my dowel rod. Then to help this stand, I actually had this stand left over from another DIY, and so I just painted it black. Now you can also construct that with some tumbling tower pieces. Once it was dry, I simply applied a generous amount of hot glue to the bottom of my pole, and now I have this super cute North Pole sign. For the next DIY, I'm going to take this little floral disc and I'm simply going to paint it in a few coats of white Waverly chalk paint. Now, after I painted the first coat, I did decide to take some Dollar Tree spackling and fill in that hole. Now, you could kind of probably skip this step because we're going to be covering this anyways, but at this point, I thought I was going to paint it, but then I changed my mind. After that, I sanded it down and then proceeded to paint one more coat of that Waverly chalk paint on that disc. Once that dried, I took this music sheet scrapbook paper, again from Hobby Lobby, and I traced my circle around it and then cut it out. Then, by using a good amount of Mod Podge, I applied a nice even coat and glued my piece of paper down on my disc. Then, to get rid of any of the paper that was hanging over, I took my sanding block and I sanded in the down direction, and that helped me to get a nice clean edge. After that, I took this little vine garland that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I had taken this off another project, so it was kind of big, so I just took it apart and then I made it a smaller wreath, and I just wrapped it around each other until I got the size I needed. Once I had the wreath in the form that I liked, I went ahead and hot glued it to the center of my little disc. After that, I took this little berry garland that I've actually had left over from Valentine's Day, and I just cut off some of the berries and randomly hot glued them around my wreath. Next, I took some pine cones off of another DIY that I had and stuck that at the top of my wreath. And then I'm going to take this solid red ribbon and just tie a simple shoelace bow. Then I'm going to glue that on the top of my pine cones. Next, I took this leftover bell that I had from a wind chime from the Dollar Tree, and the first thing I did was take out the little stick in the center, and it was easy. I just had to pry open the little loops in the middle, and then I could easily get it out. But this is exactly why you want to save stuff like this, because I have a ton of these because I did all of those metal flower DIYs and bells came on each of them. So I saved all of them and now look, it's coming in handy. So by using some super glue and some hot glue, I'm going to glue it right on top of my little disc to make it look like an ornament. Now you do have to hold it on top for several minutes until the glue sets up. After it sets up, you can go ahead and release it, and then I just cleaned it up a little bit, and I did hit the sides of my disc again with that white paint. After that, I took off the chain on the top, and then by using my chippy brush and my Waverly Antique Wax, I distressed the edges of my little ornament. Now, I love the rustic look. If you don't like the rustic look, you can absolutely skip this step. It's totally up to you and what you love and what makes your heart happy. But for Christmas, I do go the rustic route. So after that, I took a piece of twine and I'm simply going to tie it through the little loop at the top of my ornament and then tie a knot. Now, I'm not actually using this as an ornament. Again, this is some tiered tray decor. So I took three of those little wooden blocks from the Dollar Tree. I glued two on top of each other, and then I glued it to the back of my disc and then glued one right next to it, as you see. Now, I did glue my little ornament so it stood at an angle because I just thought it looked cuter like that. And now I have this really cute Christmas ornament stand-up sign for my tiered tray. Okay, so like I stated earlier, this video is in participation with the Minis Challenge hosted by Crafted by Corie. She is so talented, as you see by some of her thumbnails of her photos, and I absolutely love her DIYs. Now, a lot of people have participated in this challenge today. It was an open playlist, so I'm going to have the link to the playlist in my description box below, so make sure to click on that after you watch my video and check out some more Christmas mini inspiration. For my next DIY, I am going to use this little truck, and when I saw it in the Crafter's Square at Dollar Tree, I squealed out loud. It is a 3D truck, and how cute is this? The possibilities are endless. So of course, I had to do the traditional little red truck. So the first thing I did was give this a coat of crimson Waverly chalk paint, and whatever I do to the front, I also did to the back, but I'm just going to show you the front. After my red paint was dry, I took some black acrylic paint and just painted in my tires. Next, I took a baby wipe and I dipped it in some Waverly Antique Wax, and I used that to faux stain the grates, I guess it would be called, of my truck. Next, to give this just a little bit more detail, I took my black paint pen and I traced around all of those open areas of the truck. I just wanted to highlight those a little bit more. Next, I took this scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby and I cut out that little tree. I loved this scrapbook paper because it had a lot of Christmas themed words and graphics on it that you can use to Mod Podge onto projects, and you're going to see that the last project I actually do that too. So I just cut it out, and I did cut off the little base because I didn't really want it to look like a decorated Christmas tree. I just wanted it to look like a tree. So I cut around it so none of the white color was showing. It was just a black tree. And then I'm going to use my Mod Podge to glue that to the front of my truck on the door. Now, I did decide just to put a coat of Mod Podge over the entire thing to protect all of my paint. Once that was drying, I took this little tree that I had left over from Christmas last year, and I just kind of gave it a little haircut because it was actually missing the top of it. So I cut this down to make it look more pointed at the top, and then I'm simply just going to push that inside of my truck. After that, I took the paintbrush that had some white paint on it, and I just dabbed it on the branches of my tree so I could fill it out more with that snowy effect. Now, I purposely did not glue it in there because actually it just kind of stuck, but I'm glad I didn't because then I decided to paint the inside of my truck with red paint because I noticed that you obviously can see that it's still that natural color. Once that was dry, I took my chippy brush again and my Waverly Antique Wax, and I just distressed the front of my truck. Again, if you don't want that look, you absolutely don't have to do it. To finish it off, I stuck my tree in, and how cute is this? For my next DIY, I'm going to grab this little coffee cup picture that I got from the Dollar Tree, and after I remove it from its packaging, I'm going to give it a really good coat of that Crimson Waverly chalk paint. I actually had to give it 2 coats to cover all of the wording. Now you're going to notice I did not paint the top, and that's because we're going to cover it with something else. After that, I stuck it to the side to dry, and then I took this little wooden disc, and it's actually the back of one of those lemons from those wooden shapes. I gave it a good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white, and then by using that crimson paint, I'm going to paint the shape or the look of a peppermint. Now, I am no artist when it comes to freehand painting, so this was the best I could do. I think it turned out pretty cute, but I know someone else could do so much better. Once that was dry, I hot glued it to the middle of my little cup, and then I'm going to take this white and red twine that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to wrap it at the top of my peppermint and the bottom. Next, I'm going to take cotton balls and I'm going to kind of pull them apart so it doesn't look so much like a ball. And then I'm going to hot glue them at the top of my cup to make it look like foam. Next, I'm going to take this red and white straw that I got in a pack from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut it down and then simply hot glue it underneath the cotton. Then I took the top of a paintbrush and I dipped it in some of that crimson red paint, and I just dabbed it on my cotton to make it look a little bit more festive. Now, I kind of felt like this needed something, so what I ended up doing was removing all of the twine and then taking this really sparkly, fun ribbon. I'm not sure where this came from because my mom gave it to me from her craft stash, and I hot glued it where the twine was, and then I went ahead and hot glued the twine back on top. Finally, to add one final detail and to make this look very Christmassy, I added these little red and green poof balls to the top to make it look like sprinkles, and that completed this super cute peppermint mocha display. I just want to take a moment and remind you that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving my content and that you want to see more, so it'll show up in your suggested videos. So don't forget to give me a like. For our last DIY, I took this Home Sweet Home sign that I actually got at Dollar General, and as you can see, some of the roof had actually broken off, so I'm just using my scraper to go ahead and get off the rest of the roof, and then I'm going to replace it. Next, I'm going to take this scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to trace my house on the paper, and then I'm going to cut it out. After that, I'm going to take some Mod Podge and glue my paper onto my house. Then to remove any of the paper that was hanging over, I took my sandpaper and I sanded in the down direction to again give me that nice clean edge. After I was done with that, I did decide to paint the edges around my house with the white Waverly chalk paint. Of course, if I thought to do this earlier, I would have done it before I glued my paper on it, but actually it ended up looking okay if some of the white paint got on the front because it kind of looked like snow, and we're going to add even more snow detail to this soon. So after my white paint dried, I took these blocks that I got from the Dollar Tree and I glued a bunch of them going down my house to create a roof. Now, I purposely had them hanging over the front just a little bit. That way it did look like a roof. Then I added one to the top to create the point and then went down the other direction. After that, I painted my roof with the white Waverly chalk paint. Now, I also took my white paint and I painted on the scrapbook paper a little bit up at the point of my house, right underneath the roof, to again give it that snowy look. And then I dry brushed a little bit of that white paint at the bottom so it looked like there was snow at the bottom of the house as well. Next, I'm going to take that piece of scrapbook paper that has all of those Christmas words on it, and there's one little section that says, "'Twas the night before Christmas and all through the house." And I'm going to cut that out, and it's that whole thing, and it was just a little too long. So I cut in between the two verses and then trimmed it down a little bit, and then by using my Mod Podge, I'm going to glue these two little pieces of paper right on the front. Next, I took a little piece of garland that I had left over from last year and I made a circle with it because I'm going to make a little wreath. Now, this was kind of wild and crazy, so I decided to give it a haircut so that way it looked a little cleaner. And I really trimmed it down, and you're going to see how much of a difference that made. After that, I'm going to form it into a shape of a circle, and I am going to tack down the ends with some hot glue. And then I'm going to glue my little wreath at the point of my house on the roof. Now, before I glued it down, I actually took my brush with the white paint and I just kind of dabbed it over to give it that flocked snow look. Next, I took some of those berries off of that berry garland again, and I just randomly placed them around my wreath. Now, to make this even look more like snow, I laid down some hot glue and then I sprinkled some Epsom salt that I got at the Dollar Tree all over the roof of my house. I put the salt on the front of the roof and then on the top, and then I actually added some to the bottom as well. Then to complete this little house, I took this bow that I actually took off of another DIY and I hot glued it right to the top of my wreath. And that was it. That completed this cute little house. So now that I have all 5 DIYs complete, it's time for the final reveal. I absolutely loved how all of these DIYs came out. I really didn't think I could get into the Christmas spirit this early, but I am totally ready for Christmas. I know that sounds silly, but these DIYs just kind of jump-started me into the holiday season. So you're going to have to let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite DIY. I think mine was probably the truck, but then also that house. And maybe the ornament. I don't know. I love them all. But you're going to have to let me know which one you love. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you have not done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, if you loved what you saw today, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. I would so appreciate it. I would like to again thank Corie over at Crafted by Corie for hosting this really fun minis challenge. Also, don't forget to check out the playlist in my description box below so you can see what all of the other amazing crafters came up with. Well, until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!